Hey there, this is Kat Stancic, the lead boss with the Revenue Accelerator podcast with my guest, Dr. Ron Stotz. I'm actually really excited about today's recording because we're going to talk about something that I love that I don't get to dig into. And I feel like there's a pun there very often, which is all about your mind and the power of it and what it can do for you. So Dr. Ron Stotz is a transformational guide, 3-time best-selling author, not too bad, international speaker, PhD in psychology and doctor of chiropractic. So a legit doctor. He also guides business leaders and entrepreneurs on transformational journeys to tap into their big mind, which we're going to get into, and create the inspiring life they were meant to live. So tell me a little bit more about that concept of truly actually living the inspired life that you're wanting to, because there's a lot of dissonance in life right now in terms of people having an intention and actually living it. So what's the deal with that?
What I find is people, they make it through their childhood and out of their family of origin, surviving as best they can generally, and they really develop certain levels of skills, not recognizing that oftentimes those skills are limited by earlier aspects of their life, just subconscious limitations and things that hold them back, that they're perhaps aware of, perhaps not aware of at all. And it's fun to watch them because they begin, in my work, they begin to see how much of their energy they're using just to maintain and hold their emotional backlog in. So it's great for them to see how much they can accomplish with just the little that they've accessed so far. And when they begin to recognize, oh, okay, I really have done a great job, but only using a little bit of who and what I've got available, I'm then introducing them to that and showing them how to access those parts of themselves. Just immediately empowers them to transform their life, their organization, their family, every aspect of their life shifts. And my whole thing is understand that you're evolving, that yes, you've experienced this shift, but next time you feel like you're not enough, go deep within and access more of yourself, because you're always more than enough.
Amen to that. And especially when you're too much. So, I get that as an entrepreneur. Now, I remember coming from the corporate space where, personal development, air quotes here, if you're not watching the video, wasn't something that you did. It wasn't something that was actually really encouraged. I mean, we had concepts of, coaches at the executive level. So how does this manifest in one's life in terms of not really fully tapping into their potential, especially if they're coming or living still in that corporate space?
Mm-hmm. It is challenging even today. I mean, back in the 80s, when I helped AT&T move from a monopoly to a for-profit organization, they were so excited about what we had developed for them. I was executive VP of a corporation called Intergame. The Intergame of tennis and skiing were books very popular back then. But as excited as they were by the initial programs that we developed for them, they wanted to water them down so much because they felt more comfortable with the watered down version. I'd be honest with you, I lost interest. I just didn't even want to go further with that. And so I went back into my private practice. But today, we're really in a transformational time. And I know people say that a lot, and having been around long enough, I kind of like, yeah, right. But we really truly are. I'm watching, just all of the aspects of society that are saying, pay attention. I'm part of this society. I want to input into the society, whether it's the women's movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of the other than old white guy movement. I'm one of them. I'm not sure where they ever got the arrogance that they thought they were right, because unless we're working together, it's just impossible to really bring out the best of us. And so they're beginning, there's 50, 60 years of research now that shows that really it's the more conscious leader, the one that brings in more collaboration and cooperation, that really is focused on bringing out the best in everybody, who's more successful. And they are literally making at least 40 to certainly well above that percent more productivity and profit. And so if you want to make more money, be more conscious.
So, right, which is like, if you want to be a better person, be a better person, right? But then there's people like me who are very action oriented. And so my question is always going to be, I do love that. I love the, if you want to do good, be good. If you want to be a more successful leader, be conscious. So how does one, other than, writing down everything you do, that's not consciousness. So how do you be conscious, especially when it comes to leadership, and with that same drive of, we're not just sitting on top of the mountain and meditating all day long. There is a corporate ROI, productivity, revenue, profit margin focus.
Right. That is really consciousness, just so everybody understands on the same page, really begins with self-awareness of what you're thinking, what you're feeling emotionally and physically, and the level of consciousness you're playing on. Really being aware of that at any given point in time, the degree of your awareness determines and really reflects your level of consciousness. Of course, as you become more and more self-aware, more and more conscious, you become not only aware of self, but others. And you become aware of what they're feeling, what they're thinking. You become more compassionate, empathetic, more supportive, connected, because that deeper connection you have within yourself, of course, gets reflected in your relationships with others. And that really goes across the board. And, that awareness just continues to expand into consciousness. The higher level leaders are going to be not only concerned about themselves and their organization, but the people they buy from, sell to, their relationship with the planet. All aspects of their existence are really part of their consciousness. And so they, to gain that consciousness, they have to begin doing something that many people find challenging, is that they have to go back into the childhood and see what belief systems, what experiences they weren't able to process, for example. A child, client yesterday, literally, just didn't realize, he thought he had great parents, and they were great people. They did the best they could, but they were very emotionally,
void.
void. Yeah. And so he grew
Low
up,
emotional IQ. Yep.
he grew up with a very deep belief that to be a man, he needed to control his feelings to survive in society. He needed to stay shut down and toughen up, and that belief system did work for him. I mean, he's got a ton of money, he's got a big ranch, he's got 2 kids, he's got all these things, but he came to me realizing that he's kind of hit this ceiling, both in his personal relationships with his kids and his wife, but also in his relationship to work and relationship to other people, in the job. And so as he begins to see how disconnected he is with himself, it doesn't surprise him at all, the levels of disconnection that he sees in both the social and professional areas. And so, it only takes a couple of months to move into and through that stuff. Granted, it might go on after that, but the core really shifts as you just take a little tangent. You watch little kids, a newborn baby, they're completely helpless. They can't even turn over. You watch a horse being born, and within an hour the thing is running all over the field. As a child, we're completely helpless, and our only really ability is to connect with a mom or a parent or a caretaker of some sort. And we rely on that connection. We look outside of ourselves and depend on that connection to help modulate all our needs and take care of us in so many ways. And that's perfect. But the problem is, as we get into our teens, as we get into our 20s, we're still looking outside of ourselves for that acceptance and love, for that feedback as to who we should be, how we should feel, what we should feel, all of those aspects of ourselves. And that's just a way of giving up our power. That's a way of never knowing who and what we truly are.
Well, isn't that society though? That's what society has taught us to do, is to have this level of conformity, to be a cog in the wheel, because that's what contributing members would do, as being, peons of the system, if you will.
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
Well,
As
it
we look
works
at,
if that's what you want to be, but I don't know too many people whose aspiration is,
yeah, it doesn't work any longer.
yeah.
And I mean, if we look at our different systems, the prison system, the educational system, the health system, it just doesn't matter what system you look at, they're absolutely failing. And they're failing because of lack of leadership. And we don't have the leaders because people don't know who they are. They're so disconnected within themselves, and that just radiates out into our society. So as they become more connected, as they begin to understand and heal their past, what I watch them do is change that old program for getting love, looking outside of themselves, to looking within. And it's that inner journey that just completely begins the transformation of their life.
Yeah.
Because then it's about, serving and supporting. And
Absolutely. Well, I do so appreciate, because I know that a lot of your clients kind of have achieved a certain level of success, and some of it has been through pushing and hustle and grind and just, the late hours. And it's a very common theme when it comes to that corporate space of, holidays are just a reason to work on a proposal, right?
yeah,
It's not really something for you to enjoy. It's another reason for the company to be able to bill unbillable hours and get you doing work for them.
yeah,
So looking and taking that experience of what we see as that's the expectation, to really reclaiming the power, because nothing's going to change if nothing changes. And oftentimes I don't think people look within themselves as the person or thing that needs to change, versus trying to control, command, and overpower other people. So to create a experience that would enable you, oneself, if you will, to elevate. So why, I mean, it makes sense. It's known to a certain community of people, but why doesn't society embrace this and teach it as part of a mechanism for success, and to create community?
yeah, that's a great question. And boy, you'd be a marketing genius if you can answer that really well. But, the truth is, that's what I'm doing. That is my message. It's time to change. The old style just isn't working. Now, trying harder and using your old tools that have gotten you to where you've gotten to, it just doesn't work. It just breaks us down. We end up with heart attacks in our 50s and dementia in our 60s and 70s due to the disconnection. And there's a sense of, I had a client who last year, he came to me, it was just COVID was going on, and he has like 5 9-figure businesses, so big player. And he was, he'd lost the love of his life. He looked like he had hotels and other things. It looked like everything was going to just go down the drain. And what I watched is as he shifted from this place of trying and efforting. I mean, he was a bulldog. He really, my way or the highway kind of leadership. And as he healed, as he fell in love with himself, as he began to be more understanding and compassionate, I watched him literally within months begin to restructure his organizations. Not only his organization were being restructured, but his leadership style was shifting to one where he was much more supportive of others, and getting much more interested in input, much more interested in acknowledgement and empathy and compassion. And it was just really marvelous to watch the humanity come out as it developed within himself towards himself. And you're right. It was difficult. Oftentimes I watch them, they'll even have a belief system that I'll subtly introduce them to. It's all about, well, if I love myself, then I won't try harder. If I love myself, I'll fail. I have to push myself. I have to be hard on myself. And it's like, and of course that transfers over to employees and others in their life, even their own kids.
Yeah.
And once they realize that misdirection, that error, they really step back and go, oh, yeah, if I want the best for my kids, if I want the best for and of my employees, I really need to bring the best of who I am, and I need to be supportive and kind.
Absolutely. Well, and I think I've seen it at every stage of my own professional development, my own entrepreneurial development, if you will.
Mhm.
But these reactive experiences where something happens, hey, could you have a second for a conversation? And you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna get fired. Or, hey, I really need you to do this. Oh my, I need to work this many more hours to make up for whatever it is. Whatever that reactive story activates that small child within us. And I always find that child is 8 years old. So, so let's
That's as
just
good
say,
an age as any.
right?
Yeah.
It's the trauma age. So that 8-year-old child. So why do you think a lot of people allow that to happen as often as they do? Basically, why do they resist doing the internal work when there's so much evidence that doing it really produces such amazing results, not only for yourself and your own life, but for the people that are connected to you?
I think they feel like there's something wrong with them,
Mm.
and they don't like to acknowledge that, especially in a corporate or high level.
It's not like it's the topic at the boardroom table,
No, it's not. It is away from it, especially today more than ever. But and I'm involved with a documentary, and we keep talking about trauma, and kids don't know they had trauma for the most part. They just were living their life. I mean, I know when I ran into my issues, childhood issues and that sort of thing, complete surprise to me. I thought I had the best parents in the world, and they were great parents. They really were. They did the best they could. But when you look at where they came from and the difficulties that they were bringing, that all of a sudden allowed me to wake up to, oh, well, yes, they did the best they could, but that doesn't mean that I didn't want more. And my wanting, I've asked a question all over the world, literally. And the question is, what does a child want more than anything else? And the answer is always love.
Yeah.
And then I follow that with, well, do they want conditional love or unconditional love? Everybody seems to know the unconditional is preferable. So you've got this infant, this child who wants unconditional love more than anything else. So what they're looking about, they'll do anything to get it. And they'll really look at their family of origin, the society, and they go, okay, who do I need to be? What do I need to do? What do I need to do with these particular emotions or those? And they shove those things down inside. And they become that person that society, the family of origin, has really dictated they become to be acceptable and loved. Now, no, they didn't get the unconditional love they got, but they got enough to survive. So the opportunity is when they find themselves running up against something, to really use that as an indicator that there's something ready to heal. And when you look deeper and you find that part that's ready to be healed, you also discover that that's the very part that will release what you need to take your steps forward in life. And so it's quite perfect, but it is time, and we desperately as a society and as a planet need to bring that into our full awareness and make that not only acceptable, but something that's a gift. I mean, we're so well designed and so perfectly designed to, if you understand that every time you're bumping up against something, that's an indicator, that's an opportunity to see what's ready to be healed. And then when you begin to trust that in that healing process, you're accessing more of yourself, the part you need, that really, you begin to recognize that the universe is quite perfect. It's perfectly designed to support you in opening up your heart and living your life as fully and wonderfully as you can.
Yeah. And however you start the conversation, whether it's through driving for more career success or, revenue, whatever that is, performance, team performance, at the end of the day, it's, from everything that you've been explaining, it's, one of the most selfless things you can do is to work on yourself, because in working on yourself, you're actually giving back to the community of people that you're a part of, whether it's at work or at home. And it's actually, one of the biggest acts of love, I guess, that you can do is to really give yourself that time and space to step into your potential instead of trying to force it. And I think there's a lot of overachievers and high achievers who, they're so hardwired for Especially, I think, from past experiences. I think there's a lot of overachievers. They're dealing with trauma, and so they're overcompensating in order to move away from it, but actually are ending up moving closer to it. But any event, really actually being able to achieve success without the struggle, without the battle, without the armor. But there's something really vulnerable about that, which in turn can trigger this isn't safe, which you were talking about at the beginning.
Yeah, that vulnerability is crucial, but vulnerability requires trust and requires trust in yourself, trust in circumstances for healing. I mean, that's what of course, the main thing that I try and create is a safe, supportive, trusting environment where they feel like, okay, now I can look at things that I never even knew about or acknowledged in my life and begin to feel safe in healing those so that I can really become a more authentic human being, more empowered. Power to me means that you've opened up your heart, but so coming into your power means you're opening up your heart. You can see it any way you want, but it's really one and the same. Yeah.
So we kind of hit on it, danced around it, but we didn't actually name it in terms of the brain's subconscious versus conscious activity. People understand subconscious, people understand consciousness, but there's this ability to drive from the subconscious to the conscious. Like, how do you do that? I guess faster, because that's one of the things I know you do is you help people achieve results faster. You could do this work on your own. The likelihood of you succeeding is slim to none. But then the only way it does work is working with someone like you who has this authority and specialization, who can just pinpoint the question, the whatever that thing is, to be able to move you forward. So how do you get into your conscious mind versus this reactive subconscious state of being?
You become more conscious.
Pause for impact.
It really starts, across the board, what I watch is people come in and they're not breathing. They literally are not breathing. Most
this is everybody's reminder to go ahead and take a deep breath.
Yeah. They're breathing very, very shallowly,
right.
Or there's times when they quit breathing altogether. And as you become aware of that, they begin to sense that, oh, whenever I'm not feeling comfortable, whenever I'm feeling something emotional, whenever I'm up, I run to my head and I go into my trying and efforting mode and disconnect from who I truly am. And so getting them to breathe is the first step. And then using different techniques to get them to really step down into becoming more aware. And the interesting part, more directly in answering your question, is the brain, as co-director of the Brain Integration Center back in the 70s, I'd watch people come in and there'd be the husband, maybe he was a very left brain, logical, individually oriented person, an engineer, for example, would fit into that category. The wife would come in and she'd have this very floral dress on and she'd have her hair all, kind of interestingly done, and she's much more socially oriented. So she was a much more midbrain, right brain person. And so in other words, I started recognizing people have brain specializations. And the work we were doing back then was, all right, that's great, but how do you become a whole brain integrated thinking person? And the transformation of their lives, whether it was a student in school or a business person or relationships and marriage or that type of thing, was incredible, because all of a sudden they weren't looking for others to complete them. They were complete within themselves. So they were complementary rather than competing or looking for something and disappointed if they weren't getting it from somebody else. And so my work has just continued. It's like, okay, I know how to create a integrated whole brain thinking. And then I know how to quiet the mind. I was a meditation teacher for years. So I know how to quiet the mind. And it turns out as the mind quiets, the amygdala, which is the emotional center, begins to release control to the forebrain. And the forebrain begins to blossom. And as the forebrain blossoms, the chemical gates, think in terms of you've got your primal brain, which is really kind of the top of the spinal cord. And then you've got your midbrain with the amygdala, which is the emotional center. And then you've got your higher level thinking cortex. And so what's really happening is, as you quiet your mind, as it becomes more integrated and all the different parts are trusting and working together, that forebrain takes over, and it has a much bigger sense of how to take care of us as an individual, how we can take care of our society so that as an individual we are doing better. And with that bigger picture, it becomes, the CEO of our life, if you will. The amygdala, with more of an overly reactive emotional center that creates a lot of drama in our life. So, that shift just in terms of how we're using our brain really significantly increases your brain activity, your brain waves have shifted, but you're also, people do, I see it and hear it all the time. I feel smarter. And they are smart. I know trust me, the folks that are coming in here are pretty smart. So, but in acknowledging that they're smarter, what they're recognizing is that they're accessing their brain, they're using their brain more fully and with more ease, less effort.
Yeah.
And of course, then the next stage is what you referred to earlier, is that big mind phase, because as you have whole integrated brain thinking, the forebrain takes over, so you have really this receiver is now tuned and functional and able to access information much more fully. Then as it gets quieter still, as you work in areas of mindfulness and personal development that allow for meditation, and you get quieter and quieter, and fairly soon you begin to really be able to access what I call big mind, which is just a greater range of ability to reach information. It's yeah.
And what does intuition? So, kind of when I've seen woo people explain things, there's the ego, right, that lives promptly on your brain, and then intuition that seems to live in your gut. I kind of feel like you're going to tell me that intuition is actually part of a brain activity. Kind of hoping you're going to say that, but where does intuition play with all this?
As soon as you start that integrative whole brain thinking, your imagination, your access to your imagination, creativity, and intuition exponentially grow. Intuition quite literally takes place right here.
It is part of the
brain. So quite literally, there's a connection. And it's not that you aren't intuitive, it's that your mind's so noisy that you don't hear that. And so those signals are being sent all the time. You'll get this bit of information, that bit of information. Your intuition goes, oh, we can put those together and come up with this.
Right.
And it does that all the time.
Yeah.
Except for, again, with that monkey mind, that noisy mind, you aren't able to hear it. And so,
you can't be creative from a reactive state, right? It's just impossible. So if you're operating from that reactivity, being the Chicken Little of your company, then there's no way you can be the leader, because you need to have forethought and vision, right, in order to be able to do that. And you can't create that if you're not in a creative mode. What's a quick tip, if you will, to help people do just that? How do you go from this, flight or flight, freeze, whatever, there's like 5 of them. Flop, I think, was one that I saw once. How can you go quickly from that state to this more intuitive, insightful, visionary, creative state?
Simply by taking a moment, mentally stepping back and taking a couple of gentle, deep breaths. All of a sudden, in doing that, you become more present. And you become more present, let yourself become curious. And from that more present, curious place, more mindful place, if you will, you look at what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what's really going on in the circumstances that you're dealing with. And from that more present, conscious, aware place, you're going to see what your best next step is, what your best option is. And then you're going to take that option. Now, that might sound like you have to kind of stop your life and re-engage and that type of thing. And initially, that's probably true. But as you do that, it becomes a habit. You automatically are breathing. You automatically are being curious. You're automatically seeing. Your right brain has this really wonderful big picture perspective. Your left brain sees the optimal path to reach those highest intentions. So those parts are always engaged. And so, you don't really have to step out of your life. That's a part of your life. And you always know what the best next step is because you're always breathing and staying in place of curiosity. And that's called living mindfully.
A skill set. It's not just it's a thing that can be learned, and just like everything else can be mastered as part of practicing and employing it, part of your daily activity. I know that I've seen a lot of changes in my life and my business just by, kind of start doing more of that mindfulness, those mindfulness activities, meditation, journaling, all of that, gratitude, appreciation. I know you have some more tools for people to actually be able to leverage in order to really tap into this next potential of themselves. How can people get in touch with you and find out about those?
I think the best way is just my website. Go to ronstotts, STOTTS.com. And right there on the homepage, there's you'll see 9 insightful questions. And I really would support anyone in downloading those because those are going to have you begin that looking inward journey. And they're going to have you take a look at what's your biggest challenge, what's your biggest dream. And in that, begin to also look at, well, what's that gap in between? What is really going to be holding you back, and what do you need to move forward? And that is a very empowering experience to really answer those questions and come to that level of self-awareness and understanding. So that's free. So just recommend
Brilliant.
it.
That will definitely be in the show notes for all of you listening and wanting to take advantage of that. So, and just ronstotts.com, go on the website. Any parting words, last mic drop nugget that you want to share with everyone listening today?
It's really, and it's what you were talking about, it's really finding, perhaps it's courage, perhaps it's self-acceptance and love, but finding and recognizing that it's that inner journey. The biggest problem I see in leadership and in life is people are looking outside of themselves for what can only be found within. And so to breathe and begin that inner journey, to look within and get to know yourself, that's just a step of kindness that you're so worthy of. And I really support you in loving yourself that much so that you can learn to love yourself really unconditionally.
I love that. You're so worthy. I just had a little big old hug for that one. Ron, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone, make sure you check out that freebie and look forward to checking those out myself and seeing what those 9 questions might provide me in terms of insight as well.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you. And thank everybody for listening. Appreciate it.